Good afternoon and welcome. I am Reverend Cindy Grimes with Center for Spiritual Living Ocala, and I am so glad that you have chosen to spend a little bit of time with us this afternoon. For those of you who may be new, have not been with us before, we are the Center for Spiritual Living in Ocala, Florida, which is in North Central Florida. And I'm going to pop up our list of values here. Whoop. So this is what we value. And you can tell a lot about a person or an organization by the things that are important to them. And this is the list that we came up with at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala some years ago. And it doesn't grow old. So at the top of our list is spiritual growth and practice. We value love and appreciation, community, freedom, creativity, health and wholeness, generosity, and financial well-being. And we are part of a larger organization of Centers for Spiritual Living. We're just one of over 400 centers that are located all over the United States and the rest of the world. And our vision at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala is that we are a model center for spiritual living, as evidenced by the transformational impact we have on our own spiritual community, on the larger Centers for Spiritual Living organization, and on our community at large, where we live in Ocala. And it's a wonderful thing to be a part of the New Thought Media Network and be able to expand our reach. Which I think goes toward making us a model center for spiritual living, because we really want to be able to share this message with as many people as possible, because we know how valuable it is, myself and everyone who is part of this one. So our mission is to empower individuals to awaken to the power and presence that lies within and all around them, so that they can live their very best lives. And that means I'm living my best life. It means that you are living your best life, and everybody else that we come in contact with, that there's this great ripple effect. So let me let that go. And I want to tell you what we've been doing. We are in the middle of a program. I guess this is the 7th month of July. So we've been going through what is called the Revolutionary Love Project. It comes from the work of an author named Valerie Kaur, who is a civil rights activist, an attorney, a mom, a filmmaker, and just an amazing human being. And she has created this curriculum for bringing peace into our world, individually and collectively. So the book is called See No Stranger. The curriculum that evolved from that is called the Revolutionary Love Project. And every month we're talking about different aspects and ways of loving ourselves, loving others, and loving the people who show up as opponents in our lives. So it's a tall order. It's a big task. And we have talked about grieving with others. We have talked about anger. We've talked about feeling our own rage as a necessary thing for us in order to engage with people we may disagree with. And this month we're talking about listening, specifically listening to our opponents, to people that we may not agree with, and creating space for people to heal, for connections to happen, for growth, and for many other things. And so I'm joined by a couple of my friends today. We will be having Reverend Tom Pittman join us, as well as Donna Davis, who is a practitioner at our Center for Spiritual Living. And I'm going to bring Reverend Tom into the stream so that he can do our invocation. Hey, Tom.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come and be with us today. And what I didn't share, I didn't share your bio. People know now that we are friends. We went through the
Yeah.
ministerial program together. Tom is an attorney. I guess, are you a former attorney, or once an attorney, always an attorney?
Well, I'm a retired attorney. I'm still an attorney. I still have a license. I just don't actively practice anymore.
Gotcha. Also retired from the military?
That's true.
Yes.
Now
And
that one was in the Marine Corps, so you never ever cease being a Marine.
you never cease being a Marine. And, with those things, you're really, in our movement, you're kind of a minority, right? To be.
I'm almost to the point of being an anomaly.
Well, I love having you here, and I love the diversity of opinions. And, we're talking about listening. And I know that you also have, is it 5 daughters?
5 daughters.
5 daughters and a wife. So you are a man who has practiced in listening. And so anyway, I just love being able to share this format with you. And I'm going to turn it over to you so you can lead us in an invocation before we bring in our other guest.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
If you would take a couple of deep breaths. And if you feel comfortable doing so, close your outer eyes. And I recognize the very presence, the always presence of Spirit, wherever we are, in every now moment, for I know that God is all there is, and there's nothing, no other power. And I know that all that is created by God. It is created out of the very substance of itself. And I know that substance to be divine, unconditional love. And that's the substance from which I was created. And wouldn't you know, that's the substance from which every other person, everything in creation was created. So not only am I one with Spirit, I'm one with every other person. I'm one with everything that has ever been created. And at the core of our very essence is that unconditional love. And so I bless our time together here today as we are expressing, experiencing, discussing, knowing that all these topics that we deal with, we're dealing with from a place of unconditional love. And so I speak a word of blessing on each person present here today, on Reverend Cindy as the senior minister at CSL Ocala, on Donna as she brings her perspective to us. I know that it's a blessed and honest and loving perspective, on Rich and every other person that joins us, knowing that they are hearing from a place of love, they are speaking from a place of love, they're acting from a place of love, for that is all God is. And so I anchor this truth in that knowing and ask you to join with me in anchoring it by saying together, and so it is. I thought I'd lost you for a minute.
Sorry, I was muted. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you, Tom, for that beautiful invocation. And I'm going to bring in Donna Davis. Hey, Donna.
Hello.
Long time no see. Like, I don't know, an hour. For viewers, and Tom knows this, but we did our live gathering this morning at 11. And did that. It was great fun. And now we're back doing our virtual gatherings. So thank you, Donna, for doing double duty and driving from Atlanta to be with us.
Yeah. Well, I was coming home for a few days, so I was like, yeah, definitely. I tried to schedule. I told my boss, please, so I can be off for second Sunday. And so she said, absolutely, I understand. So she made it happen.
Terrific. So for people who don't know, you're part of this community in Ocala on a nursing gig in Atlanta. Oh, Tom disappeared. And I don't know, Tom must have hit some button. It's just technology. Oh my goodness. So we just keep rolling with it, right? It might just be you and me, Donna. I don't know. Hopefully Tom will pop back in.
It's a great conversation. So I'm excited to talk about it.
There he is. There he is. He's back.
I don't know where I went.
We were just laughing that technology. It just we had some challenges this morning too. You just have to roll with it, you know.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad I got over being a perfectionist. Oh, this is the kind of stuff would give me heart palpitations. Like I'm learning to calm down with it anyway. Thank you both for joining us.
Oh,
It's
I'm excited to see Tom. Oh my goodness.
It's so good to see you, and it's so good to be here in Ocala again, even though virtually.
yeah.
I love this community.
Yeah,
It's been a minute.
We have a good one. We do have a good
You
one.
do. You do that.
Yeah. So again, you know, we're talking about this idea of revolutionary love. And you know, I'm going to put it up here how Valerie describes revolutionary love here. So what is it? Revolutionary love. Love is a form of sweet labor, fierce, bloody, imperfect, and life-giving. A choice we make over and over again. Love can be taught, modeled, and practiced. Revolutionary love is the choice to enter into labor for others, for our opponents, and for ourselves in order to transform the world around us. And you can see how she's broken down her program into these different parts. Right now, we're in the section where it says opponents tend to the wound. We've spoken about rage as a spiritual practice. We're now talking about listening. And next month, we'll be talking about reimagining. We started out talking about wonder, grief, and fighting. So that is that. And then let me put really quick up here what she said about listening. So Valerie says, listening is an act of wonder, a refusal to demonize our opponents, and a labor of love. So we listen not for agreement, but for understanding, and so that we may build connections with others. Yeah, it's a big deal, right?
It's a huge deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah, one more thing I wanted to say here. In the introducing this topic, what I put in the summary, let me find it here. Here we go. Okay. Started out with a quote from Winston Churchill. It says, Churchill said, "It takes courage to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." Today, we're going to be discussing the challenges to deep listening, especially as we endeavor to listen to our opponents, and talk about some ways to overcome those challenges. So I happen to know that you guys are both great listeners.
I'm working on it.
Because I have come to you at various times. What's that?
I'm also a talker, so I'm working on slowing my thoughts down enough to where I don't jump in and talk. But my wife, Norma, is very good at keeping me on the straight and narrow because she'll touch me on my leg. Just like, calm down.
You know, it is a practice. It's a practice.
It really is.
So, you know, going back to that Churchill quote, that it takes courage to sit down and listen. You know, why do you think that is? And I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Do you think that's true? Does it take courage to listen? And maybe from the man with the 5 daughters.
Absolutely, it takes courage to listen. Well, you know, it's funny you talk that. You go back to my military background. I spent 34 years in the military, and quite often when the commander comes in to brief a room full of people, you know, he doesn't want them to stand at attention, but he'll come in and he'll say, "Okay, listen up." And what that means is the next thing you hear is going to be very authoritative, but it's going to be very important. And depending on your circumstances, it might be something that can save lives, or it might actually be a life and death situation. Now, that's not the way we normally get someone's attention in the everyday world, but it works very well in the military or in a paramilitary type structure. It doesn't take a whole lot of courage to have to listen then because you know that what's coming is important. And it's probably going to be important to you either about your job performance or about your safety. I know if my wife comes to me and she says, Thomas, I know that I better be listening, and this is going to probably have a great deal to do with my marital safety in the next short period of time. But in reality, I think the thing for me, and the reason I like this quote so much, is that where he talks about taking courage to sit down and listen, is most of the time we want to listen in order to respond, or we want to listen in order to convince somebody that our way of seeing things, our perspective, is the right one. You need to look at it from my way because I got the answer. And it takes courage to set that aside and just to listen to somebody's beliefs, particularly if they're going to be pushing your hot buttons in any way. So I think it takes a great deal of courage to listen without an agenda.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too. You just said it. You know, the reason it takes courage to listen is because they may say something that you don't want to hear. And that is the part that says, I'm going to stick myself out here anyway. So if Thomas's wife says, Thomas, something could be coming that you may not want to hear in that.
But probably,
That's
almost definitely it's coming.
That's where that courage comes in that says, you know, even though it's something I may not want to hear, I need to still pay attention because this is important. And there's some people you want to hear from, like your partner or your children or your friends, but Valerie's talking about opponents.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother.
It is. And I think one of the things too, and you brought up a really important point, Donna. You know, I joke about my wife, and it is true that I listen more intently when she says Thomas. But there's a piece, in addition to courage, there's a piece there called respect. And if we look at how Valerie defines opponent, we may not have that respect piece to go along with it. So we're listening to somebody that maybe we just plain don't respect at all. And that makes it even more difficult. It takes even more courage. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, good. Excellent points. I'm looking here. I don't have her definition of an opponent, but I will find that because it's important to the conversation. Because an opponent in Valerie's writing could be anyone who's opposed to you in some way. It could even be a family member at a time, right? It could be, you know, one of my 4-year-old grandsons, you know, doesn't want to go home in that moment. It's time to go home. And he becomes, you know, we become opponents. He wants to go one way, I want to go another. So how do, you know, we be that safe space for people to show up while respecting our own, you know, boundaries and safety, you know? So I think when I look at that, why does it take courage to listen? It absolutely does, because especially when you're talking to people who have other points of view, that you have to be willing to look at new perspectives. And guess what? You might change your mind.
Yes.
Right? You might learn, well, hey, you know, maybe I thought I was right, or maybe I thought I knew this or that. And you open yourself to that conversation and realize you didn't know all you think you did,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And that's why I like to listen.
And your world expands by listening.
Yeah. That's why I like to listen to people who are different from me and who think differently from me. Because I want them to allow me to kind of get into their field and see what they're seeing. Because again, sometimes we get blinders on. And this is the only way that if all you knew was this, then the whole world existed. You know?
Yeah.
So you listen to somebody that's different from you, they have a completely different field of existence and all this other stuff that they can pull upon that you probably never encountered. Like I've never encountered people like Tom's grandparents, for example.
Like what?
Like Tom's grandparents. I've never encountered people like his grandparents because they live where they live and come from where they come from and whatnot. But Tom has been influenced. And so as a result, he may have something that is pertinent to say that I would have never in my existence even heard of.
Mhm.
And so that's why those people who are different from me is who I like to listen to the most.
Yeah. So what do you all think are your biggest challenges when it comes to listening? And I'm gonna Valerie's focus here is really about listening to opponents, but I always take that bigger view, and I think we have to listen to ourselves, right? We listen to our, so it's this ripple effect, right? You have to listen to yourself. You have to know that voice that is your authentic, true voice, your higher self,
Mhm.
and what it takes to listen to other people. So, what are your challenges when it comes to listening, either yourself or others or both?
I talk too much. It's my challenge. It is. It's my blessing and my curse. It's my challenge because, and it's even with myself, because the constant chatter is there. And I'm talking up here and I'm trying to learn something or do something and it's still talking. I do the same thing outside. So that's the challenge. It's saying, okay, allow the sentence to end. Let the chatter die down. Now respond. Yeah, but it's a skill that I learned over the years and getting better all the time. And my wonderful friends will remind me that I'm doing too much chatter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a little bit different. I mean, there is some of that idea of the chatter still going on, but I'm a fixer. And in the military, your job was to get something accomplished, and if there was anything going wrong, it was to get it repaired and get it accomplished. So you're listening for information that will help you accomplish a task. Then I go to this other profession called being a trial attorney, and you're constantly listening to find holes in what someone else is saying, or you're trying to fix a problem. I used to joke and say, no one comes to you and says, gosh, I'm having a great day. Let me pay you $100 to tell you what a great day I'm having. They come in and they say, oh my God, my world is all upside down. It's all out of order. I need you to fix it. I need you to fix it yesterday. And can you do it on a discount? and that's the life of a trial attorney. So you're constantly listening to solve problems. And I have had my daughters say to me is, I just need you to listen to me. I don't need you to fix anything. So I would say that is probably the most common thing I get in feedback about. I just need to be heard. I just need to be seen.
Mhm.
Not, I need you to fix anything.
Yes, that's magical. That's the thing right there, Tom. And it's always that conversation between men and women, right? That men love to fix things, and that very, very big generalization because I'm a fixer as well. So I have both your challenges: the constant chatter in the head, right, or the waiting for that quiet time so you can jump in and say what you need to say. Which is not really, again, you're not listening, right, because you're checked out.
Yeah.
You're in your stuff in the conversation in your head, and then of course wanting to fix things. And I find my other little slippery thing is that there's a part of me that really wants to convince people that my way is right. It's like, I know if I could just share, you will see the light.
Yeah.
I have the same part.
And you'll understand that I'm right. And so it's like letting go of that agenda.
Does your part wear a cape? Because mine wears a cape.
Well, Cindy, I know you came from a large family. Donna, I don't know if you did or not, but I know that different families have different ways of communicating, and it's not great at right, wrong, good, bad, or anything like that. But one of my great larger family traditions or ways of communicating our culture was we bring up some point and then argue about it.
Mm.
And so you were listening to make a point back, and you know, it was not angry argument. It was just, that was the way you discussed something, was arguing back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we run into that too. And that goes back to this question of courage, is we're going to listen to somebody and we don't have a clue what their generational culture was as to how to communicate. And I don't know, I always presumed that large families did it that way because it was the only way you get a chance to talk sometimes. but it may not be. You know, that's my presumption.
Mm-hmm.
And it may have absolutely no bearing in fact.
Right. Thank you. I'm looking at the chat here, and Mary Lou mentioned the challenge for her is to not listen to her inner critic.
Mm.
So, you know, so that's a challenge too that I hadn't even thought about, but there's all this noise coming at us constantly and all these people and situations that are wanting our attention. And so discerning, you know, of all these voices in my head, and I'm sure I'm not the only one with a few voices, right? You know, the inner child, the inner critic, there's all these things going on in your own head. And so how do you know which one is the voice you want to listen to? Or is this person, this individual worth listening to? You know, am I setting myself up here for, you know, for a lot of drama and you know, something that's not going to make a difference. And in fact, just end up making me aggravated. Right. So it's like, you know, how do you pick and choose? Picking it. I don't know. I will say something about that as far as for other people, you know, the conversations with opponents and people who may have very different points of view than me, that one of the prerequisites for actually having a conversation and engaging in my mind is that we both want to make things better.
Yeah.
Right. So if you could establish that, like, then it's worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then it's worth my time. But if we're sitting here and you're trying to convince me of something you're not going to convince me of, or I'm trying to convince you, change your mind, or tell you you're awful for thinking the way you do, or whatever, that conversation is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So if you could start from that space of, yeah, I'll engage and I'll listen, but it's with the idea that we're going to come to better understanding or better our relationship somehow. Otherwise, I don't want to engage. I don't know. Does that make? I'll toss it out to you guys.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Sometimes I listen though, because I feel like people just need a witness. They just need the witness, somebody to stand and hear their story. And so sometimes that, if I'm in witness mode, then that's worth it. So even if, you know, we're not trying to make anything better and they're just needing to vent or something, then I just step into that space. And from that space, I can listen well, because it's like a meditative thing, you know, where I get very quiet and I just kind of listen for divine download. Then I'll say something. If spirit says say something, say something. But I didn't realize that that's, for me, it's like a meditative practice when I feel somebody's pain coming. But that's the empath in me. I'll feel the pain and I'll be like, oh boy, this person really needs help.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to be able to engage somebody by asking them, and I used to ask people, would you just like to vent? But I think a better question is, would you just like somebody to listen to you and let them speak? I think and I kind of took this from some of the examples that Valerie gave, where she wants to confront somebody. When you've determined somebody's your opponent by the definition she's using for an opponent, you've already judged that they're harmful. So that to try to engage them, it's just really difficult to engage them in any way that doesn't immediately put them on the defensive to defend their position. And I don't think the idea of what she's talking about with the deep listening and what she's talking about with the courage follows well with the idea of when I engage you, I speak words that automatically put you on the defensive, because then we've got a confrontation. We don't have a discussion. We're not having a discourse or anything like that. So I love the suggestion that you had, and I think sometimes just saying, would you like somebody just to listen, and just listen to them and let them talk.
Yeah. And to thank you, Tom. Mary Lou's question about the challenge of not listening to her inner critic.
Mm.
You know, so discerning the voices to listen to within yourself. Yeah. You have any thoughts for that? There we go. The challenge for me is not to listen to my inner critic.
Yeah. I think that is a big challenge. Our worst critic usually is ourselves, and it's that inner critic, and it's talking at several more words a minute than what we are speaking right now. But I think the best remedy for that is to do your spiritual practices and realize the truth is that you are perfect, whole, and complete spiritually, and that inner critic has made up a bunch of stuff. It's heard stuff out of context, maybe from others, and you've probably told it a whole bunch of stuff about yourself. And so learning some techniques such as just saying, stop, that's not true, might be a way to turn off the inner critic. But that's usually, I'll put in a plug for practitioners, that's usually a great thing to work with a practitioner on is, hey, yeah, I'm hearing a lot from my inner critic, and I would prefer not to listen to that anymore. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing to work on separately. And that goes back to what Valerie was saying, is sometimes it's not time for us to listen. It's just not the right time.
Right.
If we're getting too much input from our own inner critic, maybe that's not the best time to be listening to an opponent.
Right. Yeah, that's very, very true. Very true. That's a really important thing about knowing yourself. You know, this is not my moment to engage.
Yeah.
Right. You know, or there's so many scenarios for that. You know, mommy needs a timeout. I can remember doing that with my kids. You know, like, I'm not going to get into this right now because I'm really mad. And I need to go and be in another room, or, you know, whatever, till I can calm down, and then I can come out here and be coherent, and, you know, and be the decent person I want to be. So yeah, it's important.
For me, that inner critic, honestly, is, you know, the self-doubt that shows up that says, you know, your mind want this. And that's why when working with a practitioner is getting back to the truth of who you really are. And then when you get to there, then it's like, oh, yes, I am this person who can do blah, blah, blah. And then the inner critic, like you said, it kind of takes a back seat.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. This leads really well, actually, to the next question that I had here. It starts out with an Ernest Holmes quote. So Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, which we teach here at Centers for Spiritual Living. Anyway, Ernest Holmes said, "The universe holds nothing against us. No matter how many mistakes we've made, we are still perfect beings within. And the within, what's inside, may become the without. It may come out here, right? If we carefully train ourselves to listen to the inner voice of truth, that inner voice of truth, which speaks to us in our moments of quietness and solitude." So, you know, if you can listen to that inner voice, it will tell you this is your time to speak, or this is your time to listen, or it's not. Right. So how do you train yourself to listen to that inner voice? How have you trained yourselves? I know it's part of our training as practitioners and ministers and all to kind of decipher those voices. Yeah.
For me, it's that check-in, that, that check-in within myself.
Your sounds in and out a little, Donna. What was that?
I was saying it, for me, it's like a check-in. I do like a heart check-in. I just, my entire being feels aligned. It's, I don't know, it's this feeling that comes over me. So I guess it's what people say, check the heart.
So you do a body check-in? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I do like a check-in on my body, and the body is feeling uplifted and good. Then I know that's where.
Yeah.
It's not angry. It's not angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tend to fall back on a meditation, and I'll just stop whatever I'm doing. I'll turn within, and I'll actually uh, use some deep breathing with the words "so hum," and then I open my mind up to hear that still small voice of spirit. And sometimes what I will do, if I have a particular thing, a particular issue that I'm having, I'll actually use prayer revelation uh, that I learned in one of my classes in ministerial school, and it's where you ask Spirit to please reveal to you all that you need to know about whatever the issue is, in such a manner that you can understand and act upon it creatively, lovingly, sincerely, and wisely. And then I just listen. And it's amazing how those ideas, those comments will flow to you to get me back on the right time, the right thinking, the right path of spiritual awareness.
Nice. Nice. Thank you. I'm looking at the comments at the same time. So Reverend Mary Ellen has shared, she said, I actually stop right after I notice the inner critic has spoken, then interrupt it and say that's not true or that's not positive anymore for me and replace my words and exchange them for something better. So yeah, I've done that one.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I've done that one too. Like, thanks for informing me. I'm glad to know that, but you're not in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
you know? I have to give myself, like, I will entertain the voice because it's there, it's wanting to say something. So for me, I will very often journal. Like one of my journal questions this week, we talked about this, Tom, in our class, was what problem are you having? That was the prompt. And I don't even like the word problem since I've been in New Thought. It's like I don't have problems, right? I have challenges. I have opportunities for growth. But with the prompt being, what's the problem? It was like, boom, I was right there. I knew what the problem was. I don't have enough this. I don't have enough that. It was like so easy. And so I could identify what the voice was, what was being said in my head that I was not really consciously aware of.
Mhm.
I gave space. I guess I listened, I listened to that part of me that was feeling like a victim, that was feeling out of sorts, and just gave it voice. And I could look at it and say, okay, I see you now. Thank you for informing me. And we move on. That was my practice this week. So anyway, I think, let me see how we're doing for time. Oh, we have to start wrapping it up, it looks like. But before we do that, quickly, two more quick questions. One of them is, what is your practice? Is there anything you do to prepare yourself for deep listening to somebody else? As practitioner, as minister, how do you prepare yourself?
Meditation, deep breathing, Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing I do is I remind myself that no matter what is said, no matter how it's said, that it isn't about me, that I'm here to love them, no matter what they say, no matter how they say it. That's what I'm here to do, is to love them and listen to them. Because if nothing else, if they can't leave the time with me feeling that they've been heard, that they were really listened to lovingly, then I've not done what I was called to do. Uh, and I sometimes have to remind myself that it's not about me.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
beautiful. You know, I tell myself, or if it's a session, for example, you know, I preface things by you know, what needs to be said is said, what needs to be heard is heard, and just surrendering into that faith that I am divinely guided and led to know what I need to know in the moment. I may not know right now, but I can trust that as each moment presents itself, that I will know what to do. And that's
yes.
my faith. That's how I set it up for myself. Yeah. So one more question for you, and this kind of naturally will lead us into what we're talking about next week. But really, it's about the purpose of it. Like, what do you think is made possible by deep listening? And maybe from your own experiences, like, you know, we've all been in the company of great listeners, you know, and I know sometimes I can have a great listener, somebody there, and just be able to say what I need to say and then feel so much better, you know, or like, wow, you're so awesome. Thank you for what you did. And they're like, I didn't do anything. I just, you know, listen, but they created the space.
Right.
So what has been possible, or what have you seen out of this deep listening practice?
It feels like
But
the world opens up. It feels like the entire expansiveness of the universe opens up. And so deep listening does that. Whether you're doing it to yourself, listening to yourself, listening to spirit, listening to someone else, the world just opens up a little bit wider.
Hmm,
and
nice.
I think one of the nice things about that, it's that sense of freedom, that it's the freedom for the person who is speaking and has somebody listening to them. It's also the freedom for me as the listener, because I've had the opportunity to learn something about whoever the speaker is. Uh, and I don't categorize it just as understanding them, to actually learn from them. So it's that freedom for me to grow. It's the freedom for them to grow as well.
Mhm. Beautiful. When I think about it, especially really difficult conversations maybe that I might not have wanted to have or didn't want to hear, that once the thing is said, once it's acknowledged, there is a freedom, Tom. There's like a relief, you know, like that burden now is gone, and you
Yeah.
feel lighter and you feel better, and somehow there's a healing that happens when we feel acknowledged and heard. And I think, you know, even for the people who are showing up as opponents, um, and she uses that opponent, the word opponent, instead of enemy, right? So opponent is a fluid thing. You
Yeah.
know, it could be just someone who's in opposition to you in that moment. Doesn't mean it's always going to be that, right? So then the listening can even shift that, where there's that point of understanding, and maybe you're not seeing each other as opponents anymore. Yeah. So let's see what else we have. Any other comments here? Mary Lou said, walking in the right direction with a true purpose. And Mary Ellen said, listening to listening to a great listener for me is a sense of intimacy and creative connection and feeling heard. Yes,
Both very beautiful.
it is. It is. It is an intimate thing, isn't it? Listening, like
Yes, it
truly
is.
listening and truly being heard is like letting yourself be seen by somebody else. Right? It's deep. It's an honor. I
Yes.
think, for myself as a practitioner, as a minister, somebody comes to me with their their pain. It feels like an honor that they trusted enough to be able to come and feel like they were going to be heard. Yeah.
Uh,
So
there-
it is.
Space of
I had,
witness. For me, that's that space of being the witness.
Mhm.
yeah.
Because it's,
Yes.
and especially when I go back to principle and I think that God is everywhere. Oh my goodness, God is telling me a story. That's why I call it story. Tell me the
Mhm.
story. What is the story? And once I put it in that aspect, then it becomes like a movie. I'm seeing the characters, I'm seeing everything,
Right.
and then it
Beautiful.
becomes fun. So
Well, everyone, our time is done. It's time for us to close out. So if you wanted just a quick closing statement, and we will gather again next week and continue this conversation. You want to say anything in closing, Donna?
I would love for people to take for the next week just different opportunities to listen.
Hmm, thank
Just
you.
in going to leading into next week, if we finish any conversation where we feel seen and we feel heard, then that is helping us to heal.
Hmm, beautiful. So take those opportunities, whether you are the one who is providing the listening for someone else, or if you're someone who's in need of the listening, right? To find somebody. And I want to invite people to utilize practitioners, right? To call the center. Any one of us ministers, practitioners would be
Absolutely.
glad to do a session with someone. So I thank you, my dear loves, my friends, for being with us today. And as I said, we'll continue this conversation next week. And you've thrown down the gauntlet, so there's gonna be lots of silence, I think, right? Oh, thank you so much. Love you
Love you
guys.
both.
Love
Ah,
you. Bye, Tom.
bye.
Bye.
All right. Another great conversation. Something we probably can't. I was going to say we can't talk about it enough, right? But then you wouldn't be listening. So it's just a really important thing. It's just one of the vital things of relationships. We think of communication as if I'm saying the words, I'm communicating. But if there's no one listening, if there's no one to hear those words, then the communication hasn't happened. So it's really vital. So I thank you all for joining us today. And we're going to go into the next part of our conversation, which is, where is it? Blessing our gifts and sharing our gifts and tithes. So the Center for Spiritual Living Ocala exists because of the generosity of so many people who give of their time, people who give of their money, right? Their time, their talent, and their treasure. And so, though we're meeting online, we still have a physical building. We're still meeting in person. All of those things are happening. And it takes money to run a ministry and to broadcast these things. And so if you'd like to support Center for Spiritual Living and the work that we do and what we're about, we would gladly accept your offerings and donations. And we made it really easy for people to give to Center for Spiritual Living Ocala. You can go to our website and donate via PayPal at cslocala.org/donate, or text to tithe, which is just love it. I love it. If you have a smartphone, what you do is you text to the phone number going across the screen, 352-320-5110. And once you set it up the first time with your bank information, you just put in the amount of money you'd like to send the center, and you hit send, and it goes right from your account to ours. And it's super simple. And we're very, very grateful. It really has helped us quite. It helped. We can't do what we do without it. Let's just put it that way. So I want to share this affirmation with you, and I want you to just think about making it your own. Make it in your words, but just feel the sentiment of it, what it's about. It is the nature of life to give of itself. As it is the tree's nature to bear fruit and the flower's nature to bloom, it is my nature to share the gifts of my time, talent, and treasure. I participate in the divine flow of life, giving generously and receiving abundantly. I am blessed and I am a blessing. I am so very grateful for that. And I know that each one of you is a blessing, which is why I ask you to put this into your own words and hold it to your heart and know that the truth of the matter is that you can be a blessing to anybody with just a smile, with a glance, with a word of encouragement, or by offering a listening ear to somebody that needs it. You can absolutely be a blessing to someone else. Let me see if there are any other things we want to say here. Let's see. Any other conversations? Yes, great reminder. So we meet after this on Zoom for those who want to gather and talk about the subject matter or put out a prayer request where, it's just an opportunity, an informal gathering. We don't record it or anything, so it's very private. And maybe that's your opportunity to speak or to be listened to. So we invite you to join us for that. And the information is in the Zoom. And I think that is it. So let's see, we've got one more thing here, and that is our closing prayer, the prayer for protection. Now, this prayer comes from our friends at Unity, James Dillett Freeman. It is the prayer for protection, and it goes this way. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And I just affirm that is the absolute truth for you. I know that. And I affirm as you go through this, have any problems. If you don't call them that, you call them stepping stones, challenges, whatever those things may be, that they become just your opportunity to get to your greater yet to be, that you will surpass whatever that is and come out wiser, stronger, better, and more loving and kind. And so I hope you have a fabulous week. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you on Zoom, or we will see you next week. Thanks again. Have a great week.